news of a modern man. Still no man's the snow from the deserts at the hottest sand.
And welcome back. That is my amazing jingle to another episode of the Modern Man podcast. I am your host, Coach Bad News, Fidel Beauhill, and today I've got the rather amazing Elaine Godley joining me. I had the pleasure of being in one of her Facebook groups for quite a while, and she very kindly invited me onto her podcast and show very recently. We had some very interesting conversations. Elaine is a master wellness coach, and really interestingly enough, most of her work is around mentoring people around cancer, so avoiding it and recovering from it. And some of the stuff that I've watched you do, Elaine, on Facebook has been really interesting. And some of the stuff you share around cancer is really interesting. So I would like to welcome Elaine along to the Modern Man podcast, and we're going to talk about a little bit more about men's health and how we can avoid doing things and recovering from things and stuff like that. So Elaine, introduce yourself, my dear. How are you?
Thank you. I'm fantastic as always, Fidel. Always fantastic. Every day it sounds really cheesy, but it's a real pleasure to wake up in the morning, open the curtains to see what the day's weather's going to be like, and I know it's going to be a fantastic day.
Gratitude is the key to happiness. That is it for me. I found it. That's what it's all about. Wake up every day grateful, and you will be happy.
Yeah. So how I didn't mean to be a cancer mentor, but because I've had 4 cancers myself. I've had 4 different types of cancers. I've had more than 4 cancers, but 4 different types of cancer. And because my dad died of cancer, I've got a family. I've got stories, of cancer. So I keep trying to get away from it. I've created a program which is called my Perfect 10 Wellness Program, with the idea being not to get the darn thing in the first place.
Prevention is always better than a cure, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. But sadly, human nature being what it is, a lot of people don't take any action until they get the thing, and then it's panic stations.
Yes.
So I got sick and tired of saying the same thing again and again and again. But also my frustration was that I was overwhelming people. I know what to do to reverse cancer if people adopt the strategies in the right manner and soon enough. Sadly, there's a lot of late diagnosis that goes on, and people don't appreciate that cancer can take 10, 20 years to manifest. So a lot of people think you get the cancer diagnosis, you do a few things, within a few weeks you're sorted, or sadly for some people they get a diagnosis and a chap recently within 30 days died. So of course the family, friends, everybody, shock, horror, got this diagnosis. It must have been really quick, but it had been building for years and years and years. So my bias is to try and wake people up. Don't wait till the last minute.
That's news to me. Okay, so that's an interesting bit of information. I want to extrapolate a little bit then. You're saying that cancer can often take 10, 20 years to manifest itself.
Yes.
And so why then, is it because it has to be at a certain level before it can be diagnosed? Is that what we're missing? Or?
Yes, it's a combination. Some cancers are obvious. So if you have a lump or you've got some real obvious symptoms like you're pooing blood or something like that. So the obvious things are a lump that you feel, a pain that you feel, or there's something in your waterworks or your poo that's obvious. That said, still people ignore those symptoms. They do nothing about it. I know a lady who had problems with the toilet department for 2 years before she did anything, and then obviously had to dig herself out of a hole, as it were. But very often the doctors misdiagnose because some of the symptoms present themselves as piles, for example. So bowel cancer, prostate cancer, in that sort of area of our body, particularly for men, they can be hidden as other things. So it's a question of, persisting and being very thorough in the testing and looking at your body.
And I know you've just used a woman as an example, but I haven't got the statistics to hand, which is very unprofessional of me. But men are traditionally and statistically proven to visit the doctor less and are less likely to seek help when stuff appears like that, which is a problem. So you just mentioned the sort of prostate cancers obviously is a biggie for us. We talk about it quite a lot in my men's club. We do, somebody pipes up every now and again to say that they're off to have the finger up the bum, sort of thing. And it becomes quite a good question and usually quite an interactive thread of how many people have actually been and get checked out. I'm going to hold my hand up and say I haven't yet. You're looking at me like you want to tell.
No comment. I don't think any words are needed here, Fidel. Just look at my face. Yeah.
Okay, so like I'm 42. Am I in the danger zone? Like, is it something to do with age?
It's not necessarily age.
Right.
Obviously, the older we are, the more likelihood we're going to get any kind of illness, because, as I mentioned before, it can take 5, 10, 20 years to manifest. Right. Because it's a whole build-up of eating the wrong things, not exercising, worrying ourselves, so our gut hygiene is not good.
Okay. So I'm good for all of those things. I'm standing a good chance. I'm liking that. I'm very healthy and fit. I don't stress out too much, and I wake up grateful every morning.
Well, there you go. So on balance of probabilities, you may be okay, but we can't assume anything. We can't assume. Yeah. Even when I'm doing some training at the moment. I'm training to be a biohacker, which is very exciting, and it's about looking at the underlying biological systems within the body and looking at why we get ill in the first place. So we have wonderful specialists. We have various different health practitioners. We have medical specialists, but they only concentrate in their one area of specialism. Why do we need to see all these different specialists in the first place? So I'm training with a guy in Australia who's just absolutely amazing, and he's been doing this work for a number of years, and it's looking at the 5 key things why we get ill.
Okay, far away.
Which are our sugar levels, our blood pressure. I'm writing them down as I'm saying. I wasn't expecting to talk about this, but
me too. But this is gold. Sugar levels, blood pressure. Both of these conversations today.
Your electrolytes.
And that.
What else have we got? Blood sugar, blood pressure, electrolytes. Your pH balance.
Oh, interesting.
And something else. I'll remember it in a minute. Sugar, blood pressure, electrolytes, pH balance. I can't remember what the other thing is at the moment.
It'll come to us. So, weirdly enough, I did a little bit of research, still thinking about the things that affect men's health, and I came across like some quite interesting stuff. Like one of which is, as we were just discussing, that more boys are born than girls, and the sort of question that whether or not that's to make up for the fact that we die more often, and we don't make it to the end as often as women do. And the old statistic of women still outliving their husbands by 5 years, which has been a pretty consistent gap and stat for a few generations now. And then it turns out that sort of diabetes, looking at the sugar levels and the blood pressure and stuff like that, diabetes is one of the biggest killers of men. 1 in 10 men suffer from it. And I can't believe the amount of my friends and people, obviously I spend a lot of time in the gym, And it's one of those things that drive people into the gym. And it's one of those things that I've seen people, obviously the difference between type 1 and 2 are pretty stark. It's a shame they're called the same thing, actually, because it causes quite a bit of confusion. In the gym, I see people cure themselves of type 2 diabetes all the time, just with exercise and changing up their diet. But the fact that it's 40% more likely to kill guys than women was an interesting bit of information for me. I'm trying to figure out why that may be, and I think again it's probably less likely to sort of take the action required, isn't it?
Well, it could be to do with the lifestyle, because men typically would be working in environments where they're not necessarily looking after their health. They're perhaps eating on the hoof, although that applies to a lot of women these days today, of course. But people, lorry drivers, people who drive for a living, they're by default, unless they make an effort, they're not going to be doing exercise. They're going to be so they're sedentary, even though they're not sitting at a desk. As a result, things tend to kind of congregate around the middle.
We used to call it gangster's gut rot. So I've been involved in sales all my life and spending loads of years up and down the motorways and stuff like that. And you suddenly realise that, you've just spent months eating. I mean, service stations have changed a lot these days now. And the choice available in them is a lot better than it ever was.
It is a lot better, but it's still not good. I go there and I say, what have you got that's healthy? And they look at me like I got two heads.
Well, it's not. And the other thing is, you've still got to fight the willpower required. So the Marks and Spencers or the Waitrose or whatever is still at the back. And then, the healthy selection in those shops is still at the back. So you have to, after being in a miserable 4-hour car park on the M5 or whatever, you still have to walk past the donuts. You still have to walk past the smell of the Burger King or the McDonald's. You still have to walk past all the sweets and the chocolate and everything else like that to get to the healthy thing. And as you probably know, willpower is at its strongest when you're at its weakest when you're tired and you're hungry and you're sad and you're feeling down. Your willpower levels and your ability to sort of walk past that stuff. It's hard, man.
It is. You mentioned gangster's gut rot.
Yes.
Well, it was first.
Other pasties are available, by the way.
Yes. Yeah. Well, it was first noticed. I can't remember. I want to say the 1930s, maybe that's not right, but it's many years ago. I was reading an article recently, and they noticed, medical people noticed that bus drivers and conductors. I'm going back to my granddad was a bus driver, and they always had clippies, conductors that were known as clippies.
Yeah,
the clippies would be up and down the stairs on the double-decker bus. And they'd be, talking to people walking on and off the bus and up and down the stairs and so on. And they were a lot fitter and healthier. They had less time off work than the bus drivers. And they did a survey, and they noticed something which they termed busman's stomach. So, similar to what you were saying, the gut, the pie gut rot.
I was going to say, I've lost them as a sponsor now, haven't I?
Yeah. And then also, you mentioned about diabetes. Diabetes, when it was kind of made more popular, shall we say, which would have been sort of in the 70s or pre-70s, it was known as sugar diabetes, because sugar is a contributory factor to diabetes, whereas the other so there was diabetes, which is where the insulin and the pancreas are not working properly. Right. But then the sugar diabetes was a kind of a new phenomenon. We didn't have sugar before the war. There was just nothing available. There were no sweets like we have them today, and so on and so forth. So this kind of phenomenon of sugar diabetes came about, and now it's just absolutely massive. So
it's quite so there are a few of these things that are on this list that are effectively modern kind of illnesses. Now, it was a few weeks ago where I started. I don't know one of those kind of things, I think through sort of 3 o'clock in the morning thought, which was, okay, so what's the history of cancer? Because it feels like we're getting more and more of it, whether like it's a fairly modern kind of illness or something like that. And so I started, just did a little cursory sort of read through and a bit of a Google about the kind of the history of cancer. And obviously it has been around for a long time, various different kinds. The discovery of it, because it's at a molecular level, isn't it, cancer? It was very difficult to diagnose it and see that that's what was causing the deaths. It was quite interesting to read, back in sort of Victorian time, the olden days, the work that was done in order for people to, when they first discovered it and gave it a name and realized how it was spreading and the science behind it and stuff like that. But is it on the increase? That's the question, I guess.
Right. Well, it's indisputable. You've only got to look at the Cancer Research UK statistics. They're predicting that by 2020, which is now only next year, they reckon that 1 in 2 people will have cancer.
Shit.
You've only got to look around you. We will all know somebody that's had cancer or that has currently got cancer, and they're predicting 1 in 2. And yes, you're absolutely right. It is a modern type of thing, like the sugar diabetes 2 is, and it's to do with lifestyle. Simple as that. Our lifestyle, unless it's in balance, we will get these conditions. Unless we make an effort, unless we listen to our body, take action, we will get ill. It's the toxins are all around us, the temptations all around us to eat poorly. There's so many contributing factors, but it's predominantly since the war all this has happened.
And that's that's the link, isn't it? Really, the two things that have happened, which are linked with our increasing weight as a half of the globe, should we say? Yep. Less than half of the globe, and it's catching up in other parts as well, really, really quickly. And the two things are the calories and the type of food that we're taking in, the processed food, let's look at that way, which is fats, sugars, salts. A lot more of those are going into our bodies. And the second thing is we're generally removing less, aren't we? We're doing less manual work. Everything is made easier for us. We have to go outside of our houses less and less and less. When we do, we're on cars, scooters, roller skates, electric thingy.
Speak for yourself, young man.
I mean, I don't have any of those things. I'm just saying, generally, as a population, there's more and more modes of transport that require us to move less. Things are closer, things are easier. Amazon Prime delivering everything to your house the next day. It's all just there. We don't have to do anything anymore. And those are the two, and they almost double up on each other, don't they, to cause problems. So on this list of the sort of top 5 killers of men, the top 5 health issues, we've got heart disease, we've got the two main cancers that get guys with prostate and skin cancer, we've got diabetes, and then the other 2, which we'll cover a bit later, I do want to talk about which is the one headline grabber at the moment, which is men's mental health and suicide. A big sort of footnote under that is loneliness, which was really interesting. Loneliness being one of the main drivers for both of those issues for men. And then addiction, which we are way more prone to. And that fits into the whole food and easy, we're talking cigarettes, alcohol as well, that kind of cause all of that, and drugs. So talk to me about your thoughts and what you think are the biggest contributors to these epidemics, particularly the cancer and the diabetes.
Well, as I said, the huge thing really where we kind of drew a line in the sand is the war, because pre-war we didn't have the foods. Processed foods weren't invented. Canned food was, but there was no processed food like we have it today. Shopping, we used to go. I remember my mum sending my brother and I to the shops, and Sainsbury's, other supermarkets are available. We'd go to the different counters. We'd go to the meat counter, and we go to the cheese, and one of us would go to the bread, and we'd all go to all these different places. We had proper shops that sold proper things, and it was all natural. Every single thing was pretty fresh. Now we have to look for these fresh things, and they don't just kind of fall in our lap anymore. But there was no obesity. During the war, there was rationing, so people weren't able to get fat because they didn't eat enough. We eat far too much now. It's gluttonous, the amount of food that we eat.
Well, it was
we did
a sign of wealth, wasn't it?
In way back, it was a sign of wealth. Yes, because it was a sign of being able to sit around, the fact that you could afford. In fact, in Wollerton, in Nottingham, Wollerton Hall, which is where they filmed the Batman. It was the Batman Wayne Manor.
Yeah.
I did a tour recently, and we went in the kitchens underneath the manor house, and they were saying the same thing, that the rich ate rich foods and so on and so forth, and got larger, whereas the kitchen staff, they ate all of the same food but kind of in more of a raw state, whereas the posh people had more kind of richer foods. The kitchen staff ate raw state, natural. They were physically working, and they were fit and healthy.
And now it's flipped, isn't it?
Yes.
The obesity, the people being overweight, the unhealth, the cancer, and everything else like that, and the diabetes actually now is affecting people on lower incomes. And the wealthier you are, actually, the healthier you are. And that's been proven time and time again. I've read some other statistics, and they were looking at the different parts of the country, and longevity, and use of health facilities and NHS and everything else like that. And it's just really interesting looking at the spot marks of the on the map there, of where and the correlation between poverty and bad health, and those specific illnesses, the bad health that
you're right, Fidel.
Agree.
Yeah, and it has literally turned on its head. So today you've got poorer people, the people on the lower incomes, they can't afford to buy the top quality foods. So they're buying cheaper foods, processed foods, which is full of nasty things that we shouldn't be eating, many of which we can't even pronounce on the labels. So they're eating low quality foods, and they're not being, they're not getting the right nutrition. So they might be overweight, but they're actually undernourished. So the nourishment in the food that they're eating is minuscule. And then if they can use a microwave, for example, to heat food, they may as well eat the cardboard box, quite frankly, because there's no nutritional value in things that have been microwaved.
I discovered microwave bacon.
No, I wouldn't. My worst enemy.
No, I felt suspiciously good. No. I mean, I would. My diet is very, very good. I eat well. I'm very aware of it. I tell you where I've really noticed the difficulty, though, actually, is with my kids. And the battle, even as someone like me who knows, I'm aware, my cultural background, I'm half Jamaican, I'm Brazilian, and my mum always fed me well, taught me how to cook at a very young age. I trained as a chef when I was 16, straight out of school. I enjoy cooking. I enjoy eating proper fresh food. I'm very passionate about food. I do eat the odd bit of junk, do you know what I mean? But on balance, it's 70-80% I eat real normal food. But it has been a lifelong battle, and still is, with my children to do the same. Actually, as they get older, my stepdaughter now it's worked. While they were kids, it was difficult, but being relentless about it. My stepdaughter now cooks a lot for herself, and is a lot more interested in food now that she's an adult and kind of understands that sort of stuff. So I'm hoping it happens with the other two as well. But it's a constant battle, isn't it? This isn't easy for us. No,
and as you say, there's so many temptations, and also cost comes into it quite considerably. But it's the 80-20 rule. Absolutely, we can't get anal about this. We can't just get worried that the slightest thing we put in our mouth is going to poison us. So we've got to live in balance. So 80-20 is fine. I'm probably more like 90-10, but I'm still not a saint by any means.
Yeah.
But with the organic, the organic foods are more expensive.
They are.
far better for us. A lot of people are growing their own now, but I don't have the time or the inclination to grow.
So
But it's
organic is
education
important,
as well,
yeah?
though. Organic is very important because it's not necessarily more. There's not necessarily more nutrition as such in the organic food, but the benefit is you're not eating the pesticides, glyphosate, etc., and all the chemicals. So by default, I've yet to see an article or a research study that says it's more nutritious. Most of the articles I've seen don't prove more nutrition one way or the other, but what they do demonstrate is the chemical aspect, and to me that is huge because the chemicals are contributory factor to cancers.
Okay, and what are the other contributory factors for you?
For cancer generally, it's poor diet. It's worrying over the slightest thing. So if you're a worry guts type of person, you will bring ill health on. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be a variety of different health issues. Every now and then there'll be articles about the walk-ins at the National Health Service and the accident and emergency, and something like 75% of the walk-ins shouldn't be there. A lot of them, they are symptoms. They're suffering with symptoms of stress, which is self-induced, and with the gut issues. So eating poor food is a start. A lot of people have palpitations, heartburn, this type of thing, and it's all down to the food that we eat and the way we eat it, and the fact that a lot of the British population are worriers. So they're literally worrying themselves into ill health without realising what they're doing.
That's interesting. So, I'm a big advocate, both in my club and the work we do with the community interest company, the Modern Man Club, and soon to be the Modern Woman Club as well. And obviously, I do talk about mental health and the suicide factor, but a bit like yourself, where I come in is I'm all about the prevention. So I'm all about showing people how to live in a way where they don't get there in the first place. Which is a little less sexy and it's a little less headline grabby than being suicide preventative and everything else like that. Like, people prefer to wait until they get to that place before they want to take the action. But a part of that is exercise. Do you know what I mean? Just moving more and training, which releases stress. It's one of the biggest things for me that whenever I feel like things are getting on top of me, getting out, running, training, exercise really relieves a lot of that for me. And again, I guess reducing worry is good for your mental health. I didn't realize the impact on your physical health. I did an interview with a guy a while ago he's was sort of specializing. This leads on to prostate cancer, actually. And he was so I ended up in hospital once with a panic attack due to the stress and the worry that was going on in my life at that time, about 3 years ago, and that's what led to me changing into this line of work. So there's a combination of stress and worry building up inside. And when I spoke to him he was talking about the link between sort of stress and the physical impact of it. In particular with men, and he was talking about the link to prostate cancer and how that is almost directly linked to stress and worry. And what he was talking about was that and I've since been and researched it as well, is that it hits us at an age where we get into sort of over the hill. We get towards the end of our careers and we start to worry about being overtaken by the younger men who come into our workplace and into our business arenas and everything else like that. And there's this stress that we're going to be usurped and overthrown by the younger guys in our workplace, and it's an underlying thing that's going on in our unconscious mind, and the general workplace, the bit that gets triggered, the fight or flight elements in your body that get triggered through stress. You can't run away from it because it's paperwork. You can't run out of the office every time someone gives you another case or whatever, another client phones you up. But biologically, there are still those triggers going on that make you want to run away or have a fight. So they're triggering all this stuff, which for men happens around the prostate area. And these chemicals, after years and years and years of being triggered, particularly when you get to sort of late middle age, is what's causing the problem for guys in the prostate area.
Yeah, and prostate cancer typically is hormone driven, and when you're stressed, your hormones are all over the place.
Yep.
So you're absolutely right, and the same with women with breast cancer and prostate cancer. It's a similar kind of they're not all hormone driven, but most of them, the sort of more common ones are hormone driven. And it is, as you say, it's, stress is a huge factor in cancers and all kinds of illnesses, but cancers in particular.
And so what are we going to do then to try and get people to live in a better way to prevent this stuff?
Well, I think the education in school needs to step up a bit more than it is. My eldest grandson is currently in training to become a chef. He's doing an apprenticeship. And I took him to work the other day and we were talking about food. And I was saying there was a load of cows in the field. And he pointed out that these cows provide the milk for McDonald's banana milkshakes. Mm-hmm. So I said, I wonder if they're organic. And he said, what's organic? So he's been through school, he's training as a chef, and he didn't know what organic is. I could have cried, really. I just amazed. And it's not his fault, but if the education isn't there, so I'm...
That's quite frightening.
It is, yeah. So I think the education piece needs to be improved somehow or another. And my Perfect 10 Wellness program talks about balance, and one of the things in there, there's obviously there's 10 areas, hence the name, but one of them is body, and the nutrition that we put in our body is really, really important. But there's so many aspects to it. I could do a whole module on food, but where do you start? Where do you stop? So my approach is, let's look at the balance in our lives. So let's look at the environment we're living in, whether we're at home, whether we're at work, our friends, our family, values, attitudes, beliefs, behaviours, our minds and our body, all of those aspects. If they're in balance, then we're unlikely to be getting ill. So rather than just bang on about, we need to eat better and so on and so forth, that's a tiny bit of the picture, really. It's about the whole life balance that's really important. And that also then includes what you were saying about loneliness and addiction and depression and all that kind of stuff. So if you've got a good family around you, if you've got good friends around you, then you have a support network who, if they are true friends, and you've got a good decent family, we don't all have, but if you do, then we've got a support mechanism there that we can turn to ask for help when we need it.
This is a conversation that's been popping up a lot for me lately, actually. It's a really interesting. We're going to get slightly off topic, but I guess not, because you brought it in. I found myself saying this several times about the rise of kind of like individualism and the effect that this is having on us as a sort of society. Like, human beings are innately community driven. We're community animals, aren't we? We're meant to live in little groups and be sort of supportive and share our stuff. That's kind of like where we are naturally, biologically underlying. That's kind of what makes us happy. Okay, even the so-called introverts, not so-called, I mean, it's a thing, but even introverted people still need to be part of their little tribes and packs, and lots of our behaviors are around that. Yet so much of the language out there, even driven from people in both of our line of work, is focused on the self and about being enriching ourselves and being who we are and understanding ourselves and focusing on our happiness and everything else like that. It's very inward focused, I think, and we lose track. And actually, if you track where people are at their most happiest, I watched a documentary about, they looked at Japan and they were looking at, I can't remember the word, they've even got a word now where people, 30 and 40-year-old men are just dropping dead at work. They're literally working themselves to death. And they live in a very individualistic kind of lifestyle. And yet the happiest place in the world is the little island in... I can't remember the name. I'm having a bad day at this. Little island just off Japan, where they are completely community focused. Everybody absolutely lives for the community. They have community gardens. The way that they bring the kids up, the little old ladies and the old guys, once they get to a certain age, they go and live. They're all around in the school and they're helping with the children. And the one community goes and visits the other community on a monthly basis. They're next door neighbours with the little villages, and these people live the longest. This is the in the entire world. And they sort of tracked where people live the longest and are the happiest, and they're all very community driven populations.
Well, what you've just described, Fidel, is how I was brought up, and that it was called village life.
Yeah.
They say, it takes a whole community to raise a child. We didn't have any of this nonsense where, children were giving us back chat and all the rest. We daren't. No way, Jose. The policeman would clock you around the head, physically give you a clump. And even other parents in the street, if you were playing out or across the fields or wherever you were, and you back chatted, or if you were rude or anything at all, you'd get a clump, and you'd certainly get taken home by, dragged by your ear, and you'd not only get told off for whatever the thing was you'd done, but you'd also get told off, for the police, or the embarrassment of having a community member bring you home.
For sure. I mean, and this was what the first conversation. There was a guy in my men's group that was saying that the village that he'd just moved from was having some problems with a couple of youths. They'd gone out and they were setting a few fires, and they were putting things in the road, puncturing tires, and doing all of this. And how do you manage that as a community? You remembered it happening 10, 15 years ago, and a couple of the men from the community went and had a word in their ear, sort of thing. Nothing violent, no threats or anything else like that, but they went and told them, and the problem stopped. And this doesn't seem to be happening this time. And how we've kind of escaped from the ability to do that. And now there's a level of fear of whether you're allowed to do it and whether you're going to get in trouble for doing it. And it's just made me really reflect on this. Another conversation I was having today was about tax and how everybody was more prepared to sort of move out of the country rather, to prevent themselves from paying more tax. And I was like, I think that's just another symptom of the same mindset where everybody is just so focused on themselves. Listen, it's not as black and white as that, but I think it's a symptom where we're thinking less and less about how we fit into a community and what our part in the community is. And then you look at the people who I know that are more fulfilled and happy, and they're all they're the selfless people, right? Mm. They're the people that embed themselves into their community and spend their time working and being around everybody and talking and helping. And like my mum, for instance, my mum's still out. She's 76 now. She just won a community award. She's down at the local community gardens and growing all of this stuff and helping people. And she's just really ingrained. And I look at her sort of happiness levels and even her health. With her health, she should have been long gone, if I'm honest with you, the state of her health. But her sort of, the way she keeps going and the way I think her lifestyle, not just her fitness and what she eats, but being so plugged into the local community is definitely part of what's keeping her going, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. The positive mental attitude that you referred to with your mum, that is huge in overcoming all kinds of illnesses. so for example, I was given a year to live 4 years ago with stage 4 cancer.
Yeah.
It never entered my head that I was going to die. No way, Jose. I've got far more mischief to get up to before I pop my clogs. No one's telling me when I'm going to go. And so it's about resilience, having the mindset that you can get through things. You're a strong person. Not everybody can do that. And everybody's vulnerable. I'm not, perfect by any means, but if you have a strong immune system and a strong mind, you're unlikely to get ill. And if you do get ill, then the likelihood is you will recover a lot quicker than people who are not quite so resilient.
So we hear these stories, and then the kind of the comeback to it, almost I hear a lot, is that it's kind of like a dangerous thing to say to people, that you can recover from cancer with a positive mindset and sort of eating your, changing your diet and stuff like that. And actually people do need these chemotherapy and other sort of therapies to help them get better. And that sometimes when we talk about this other stuff, we're going to stop people from doing this. What's your take on it?
Well, that's kind of a black and white view, but life isn't black and white, as we know.
Agreed.
And nobody in their right mind would say, don't do what the doctors say, do something else. No, nobody at all would in their right mind do that.
I've seen it and heard it though, by the way.
Right. Well, they're idiots if they're doing that. Let's look at the integrative approach. Let's look at the again the balance, 80-20 rule, whatever, but it has to be what's right for you as an individual. So look at your situation, look at the prognosis, look at the diagnosis, etc. Diagnosis versus prognosis, and take the best of the National Health Service, take the best of complementary, fuse them together. You can make your own personal prescription, but to say one or the other, it's not either or. To me it's integrative. It's complementary. Whereas what some people are talking about is alternative. So if you're doing something that's natural, that's alternative to mainstream medicine, I think that's a very silly approach in my personal view, because we all need a bit of help. Our bodies need help along the way, and with medical advances, they can do all sorts of things today that they weren't able to do years ago. So why would we shun it?
I agree. We've done this a little bit topsy-turvy, but I actually can you give us like a snapshot of your story? So obviously you said you've had 4 cancers. What do you think led to that, and what do you think were the important parts of you sort of overcoming it?
Okay, mindful that fact that we don't have long. I first had breast cancer in 2009, and I was diagnosed with something called DCIS, which is ductal cancer in situ. It's actually not real cancer, but it's very widely diagnosed. And in fact, last week I met a lady who had exactly the same diagnosis as me, high grade DCIS. She had an 8 millimeter lump, if you like. It wasn't a lump because we didn't actually feel anything, but on the mammogram it showed up, and even in the same breast. And I've never met in all these years anybody with exactly the same diagnosis as me. Things have not changed. I was rushed into surgery as she is being rushed into surgery, and nothing seems to have advanced over the last 10 years. I had a health insurance. When I went to claim on it, they told me it was the wrong type of cancer. And knowing what I know now, I would not have had surgery, but that's another story. So I started off in 2009 with high-grade DCIS. I had been working absolutely mental hours, but because I enjoy what I do, I tend to blur the lines between working and playing, because my whole life is a playground, basically. But my intellectually, I was kind of not excusing, justifying the hours I was working. I'd be working sometimes till 2-3 o'clock in the morning for clients. I was a business consultant at that time. Yeah. So I'd be doing turnarounds and team reorganisational transformational projects and that kind of thing with big teams. So absolutely love that. So I'd be working till sometimes 2-3 o'clock in the morning, getting up at 6 and doing it all again. Madness. But I enjoyed it so much, it didn't feel like work. So intellectually I'm there, but my body, over a period of time, gradually said, no, you're not doing this anymore. And the only way we can stop you is by bringing you down with something, which was this shock. So I had surgery. I'd had a few drugs, but then I took myself off because I wasn't happy with them. And then everything was okay for about 18 months. And then intuitively, this is another big one as well, following your intuition. Intuitively, I felt something was wrong. No lumps, no pain, no symptoms, no nothing, getting on with my life. But I asked them to check me out and found that I had a grade 3 tumour in the site of my mastectomy. So I'd had my right breast removed. It was reconstructed using muscle, tissues, skin, etc. from my stomach. So I had a tummy tuck effectively, which formed a new breast. So how could I possibly have a grade 3 tumour in my site of my mastectomy when my breast came from my stomach? Go figure. They couldn't explain it. I was under John Radcliffe at wherever it was, Oxford. So that was in 2011, and 2012 at the beginning I had a bit of I had radiotherapy. They wanted me to have chemo and I said no, but I did accept radiotherapy. Again, I was sort of bullied into it and I didn't know any different then. So again, I'm going back now 7 years. But that radiotherapy recently caused me to have a fractured spine, which I'll talk about in a minute. So I had the mastectomy, the reconstruction. I had the grade 3 tumour, and then for many instances, I had lots of bumps and lumps coming up. Fast forward July 2015, I was diagnosed with grade 4 Hodgkin's lymphoma. And there is a link between breast cancer and Hodgkin's lymphoma, but it's an unofficial sort of link. It's the sort of thing that we all know about, but there's no kind of records or studies or anything. And it often happens the other way around, but in my case, it was this way. And then in the last 18 months, I've had 5 episodes of skin cancer, which I've dealt with naturally on my face. So each of the cancers I've had, I've dealt with differently according to what I've known at the time. But all of them, the very beginning was overworking, burnout. It was also that as a result of a long-term candida in my gut because I was on antibiotics. I'd been on them for 23 years for a kidney condition I was born with. I cured that myself 20 years ago using diet, lifestyle, chiropractic, etc. And I was told I'd be on antibiotics for life. Well, as I say, 20 years ago, I woke up to natural health. That was my first sort of induction into the new arena. So the fact that long-term antibiotics causes candida, and that is a contributory factor to cancer. So the overworking as well. I've had quite a lot of stress on and off. I've got a book coming out later on this year, Perfect Health, True Life Stories. Volume 1, and I talk a bit about it in there in my chapter. But then also I was a competitive swimmer, and I used to train twice a day in a chlorinated pool, heavily chlorinated pool. So again, the toxins from there. So if you add all of that recipe together, the stress, the toxic chemicals, the antibiotics, the overworking, it's a complete recipe, for cancer.
So no wonder you wake up every morning, glad.
Yes, I wake up every morning, and as I say, I literally, I have a smile on my face. I open the curtains, and whatever the weather is, I welcome it. It doesn't matter. I'm sitting here now in my cabin in the garden. It's absolutely chucking it down with rain, but how wonderful for the plants, and I can virtually see my grass growing here. It's growing in front of my eyes with this rain.
You do sound like my mum. Good for the garden. Wow. I believe I've got a few words in that book that's coming out.
Yes, you have. Yes. Yeah, what does perfect health mean to you? I was looking at it again this morning. Yeah, we're almost there on the final version now. We're just tweaking tinsy wincy little things now. I'm really proud of it. It's fabulous.
I'm looking forward to reading it. Yeah, interestingly enough, I mean, it's my few words were talking about almost the instinctual part, and sort of as a hypnotherapist and an NLP master, my thing is that your unconscious mind knows. It knows. It's had a blueprint of your body in perfect health. It knows what that is. So we know when we're eating right and badly, which is why I don't think while you're living an unhealthy lifestyle, because I was this guy, and it's controversial to say it, but I think while you're leading an unhealthy lifestyle, it's very, very difficult to be happy, because underneath, you know that you're not healthy. And when you start putting the right food into your body, when you start training and exercising and building your body and doing the right things, you will be happier, because your unconscious mind and your instincts and everything else like that have less to worry about. And they're like, okay, he's doing the right things. And you just see it time and time again. People's mood completely shifts. And do you know that I was the fat guy that my dad always. I had this conversation with my dad as well, and like there was a period in my life where I completely overate and I overdrank and everything else like that in Spain. They call it a curva de felicidades over there, the curve of happy days. So that sign of wealth, that you were doing really well. That's what your barriga is, your stomach. Is this curve of happy days, and I was like, I'm enjoying my life. Look at me, this is the thing. But on reflection, now I know that in the back of my mind, I wasn't happy.
Yeah.
And your unconscious mind is driving you to do different behavior. Really, it is.
Yeah, and it's about balance. Nobody heals us. People call themselves healers. Doctors aren't healers. We can't even heal ourselves. Our body will heal itself. We just need to listen to it and give it the right environment, and it will heal itself.
Agreed. What a lovely note. I think we're going to wrap it up there. But it's a good point, isn't it? We know, and this is the thing about coaching in general, isn't it? Really, people know what they need. It's about extracting that out and facilitating it, isn't it? So I guess that's what you're doing now in your perfect 10. People do know, and we all know what we should be doing. We've just got to pay a little bit more attention to ourselves, haven't we?
We have indeed, absolutely. We should listen to ourselves, get out of our own way.
Yes. Thank you very much, Elaine. That was an amazing and interesting conversation. I'm so proud of this podcast. Sometimes we get people on here and there are real little nuggets, and that was absolutely one of them. I'm looking forward to listening back to this and making some more notes on it myself, and I'm going to up you on my list of priority readings and stuff like that in my social medias, because it's something I need to learn about, and it's definitely something I want to talk to my clients about a bit more, because my sort of 3 pillars are health, wealth and relationships, and the health side things for me comes first, and that's where we start with everything is increasing the habits and the lifestyle around your health, because only then the other stuff comes afterwards. So you've got to sort yourself out first. And then you can start taking away some of the stress from having bad financial management, and then you can take yourself fully into your relationships. That's kind of like my sort of philosophy. So the more I can learn about this stuff, the better. So thank you very much, Elaine. Give us just tell us how people can raise you up on their level of awareness and in their social media and in their life. How can they find you? How can they follow you? How can they get more information about what you're doing?
Okay, so I'm on the internet, of course, perfect-health.co.uk. My Facebook group, we have nearly 3,000 people in, is an open group, which you're on there. Yes, Fidel. It's called Perfect Health with Elaine Godley. I have a radio show called Perfect Health on Elastic FM with Elaine Godley. I'm on Instagram and Twitter and all the usual bits and bobs. And basically, if all that fails, then just Google me, Google Elaine Godley, and there'll be all sorts come up.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Elaine. And thank you very much, listeners. This has been another golden nugget of a podcast for me. If you want to be involved with the Modern Man, the best place to get in touch with us is the Modern Man Club, our men-only Facebook community, and our website, modernman.org.uk. And we're getting places with our Modern Man Club program. It's slowly coming to life, and we're working with gym owners and personal trainers to run Modern Man Club sessions. So if you're one of those guys, a gym owner or a personal trainer, and you want to get involved with us and start running Modern Man Club sessions, which involve looking at health aspects and combining that with some providing a safe space for men to talk about their mental health as well, just get in touch. Fidel@modernman.org.uk. Thank you once again, Elaine, for joining us. Thank you, everybody, for listening, and we will see you again next Monday.